Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube videos. In this video I'm going to start with a new topic and tell you about percolation theory. That's chapter 13 of my stochastic modeling book. So to begin with, more precisely, we are going to study a process called bond percolation. The process is in fact very easy to describe, to define, but very difficult to study. So the process can be defined in any dimension 2, 3 or more, but just for simplicity I'm going to just for the picture explain how we can define the model in 2 dimensions. So the starting point is to consider the 2-dimensional infinite lattice. So you look at all the possible points in Z at the power 2 that defines a grid, and you turn that into a graph by assuming that each vertex in Z2 is connected to each of its 4 nearest neighbors. So that defines an infinite graph with an infinite regular graph with degree 4. And now what you do is you take a coin, you assume that the coin comes up heads with probability P, tails with probability 1 minus P, and for each of the edges of this infinite graph, you are going to flip the coin. Each time you get heads, you declare the edge to be open, but each time you get tails, you declare the edge to be closed. So for instance, here I'm showing you pictures that are simulated from a computer program, and for instance on the left you have a realization of bond percolation with parameter P equals 0.45, and on the right you have another realization of bond percolation in 2 dimensions, but this time with parameter P equals 0.55, and in those 2 pictures the white edges are the ones that are open, while where there is nothing that corresponds to closed edges. Now, what can we say about those pictures? Which kind of, at least qualitative aspect of those pictures can we study? So to answer this question, we are going to look at some concrete example of application. So even if percolation theory was introduced by people interested in physics, and percolation theory has in fact a lot of application in physics, the example of application I'm going to give you now is an example of application in epidemiology. So let's assume that all the vertices of the graph, so the in general d-dimensional integer lattice, is all those vertices are occupied by exactly 1 individual, and also assume that any 2 neighbors on this grid, so meaning any 2 individuals connected by an edge, are going to be friends with a fixed probability P. We also assume that friendship relationships are independent across the grid. Then assume also that the individual, one given individual, so let's say for instance the individual at the origin gets infected by a disease, and let's assume that this disease can only spread from friend to friend. So a natural question is, what is the probability that there will be eventually an epidemic? And by epidemics, I mean that what is the probability that eventually infinitely many individuals will get infected? So going back to those 2 pictures showing 2 different realizations of bond percolation in 2 dimensions, you can really think of each open edge as a friendship relationship, in which case, having this interpretation in mind, the probability that there is an epidemic is exactly the same as the probability that the cluster of open edges starting from a given vertex, so let's say for instance the origin, is infinite or not. So that's one of the main questions in percolation theory. You start with an infinite graph, you keep only open edges with probability P, the other edges are rejected. That gives you a random subgraph, and the question is about the size of the clusters. Are those clusters infinite or finite? Now, if you have good eyes, you can see on the picture, in the picture on the left, the realization of bond percolation with parameter 0.45, that all the clusters we see are pretty small. They are all finite and pretty small. But if you look at the picture on the right, you are going to have, starting, let's say, from the middle of the picture, you are going to have what we call a giant component that covers almost all the universe, and only in between there are gaps in this cluster and you see little clusters. But mostly looking carefully at those pictures, on the left you see a bunch of tiny clusters, while on the right there is a giant connected component, suggesting that if nearest neighbors are friends with probability 0.45, the probability of an epidemic, infinitely many individuals being infected, should be 0. At the opposite for the picture on the right, in which case nearest neighbors are going to be friends with probability 0.55. In this case, there is a positive probability of an epidemic. So going from the picture on the left to the picture on the right, you see that there is really a difference in the behavior of the process. There is, in fact, in between something we call a phase transition, going from a picture with infinitely many finite clusters to a picture with a giant cluster that covers most of the space. So now in the rest of this video, I'm going to first give you a more formal definition of bond percolation in 2 dimensions, or more generally in D dimension. I'm also going to introduce some terminology that we are going to use after to really study those processes. And we are going to also prove one theorem. The theorem is in fact intuitively obvious, but not so easy to prove, in fact, and I'm going to take advantage of the proof of this theorem to introduce a new technique that we didn't see before called coupling argument. And the theorem, in the context of epidemiology, says that the probability of an epidemic is going to be a non-decreasing function of this parameter p. In terms of the realization of bond percolation, so the 2 pictures I showed you, this means that if P increases, meaning that if you increase the density, let's say, of open edges, then you are going to be more likely to see an infinite cluster starting, an infinite cluster of open edges starting from the origin. So here is a more rigorous description of the process, bond percolation. I remind you that we start from the d-dimensional integer lattice. You think of that as a graph, an infinite regular graph with degree 2d, where each vertex is connected by an edge to each of its 2d nearest neighbors. Now, for each edge e of this graph, you are going to call xi of e. You are going to let xi of e be a Bernoulli random variable with parameter p. We also assume that for different ages, those Bernoulli random variables are independent. That corresponds, in fact, to open edges or friendship relationship. Then that's where we introduce this terminology of open edges and closed edges. We said that edge E is open if xi of E is equal to 1, and the edge is closed if xi of E is equal to 0. Then we are going to write x left, right, arrow, y to indicate that there is an open path connecting both vertices. So by an open path, I mean a path of open edges. And so this relationship between 2 vertices of the graph means that you can go from vertex x to vertex y by just following only the open edges. In this case, we say that, again, those 2 vertices are connected by an open path. Then, over definition, what do we mean by open cluster starting at a vertex x? Well, that's going to be exactly all the vertices that are connected by x by an open path. So, rigorously, we call that Cx. That's the set of vertices y, such that x, left, right, arrow, y. Finally, the quantity, like one of the quantity of interest in percolation theory, is called the percolation probability. That's also the probability of some event that we call the percolation event. And the percolation event is the event that the cluster of open edges starting from the origin 0 is infinite. So that's this event at the bottom right of the slide, this kind of absolute value of C0, that's just a notation I use to indicate the number of vertices in the cluster starting at 0. And we look at the probability of this event. So what is the probability that the cluster starting at 0 is infinite? That's also the same as the probability of an epidemic. And you see here, I put a subscript little p next to the probability because obviously this probability should depend on this parameter p that corresponds to the density of open edges. So we are going to call this percolation probability theta of p. That's clearly a function of theta, and now the goal is to study this function, and we are going to prove now that this function is non-decreasing with respect to p. So here is the theorem we want to prove. So to prove that this function is non-decreasing, what we are going to do is fix p1 less than p2, and we want to prove that theta p1 is less than p2. So typically, to prove that a function is non-decreasing, for instance, you can just study that function itself. Now, the problem is that the process is too complicated, and in fact, we have absolutely no idea of what is this function. And so, to prove this result, typically, that's what you want to do in general in probability theory or the theory of stochastic processes, to compare different processes with different parameters and prove some kind of monotonicity relationship. What we do typically is use something called a coupling argument. So I'm going to write this keyword so that the technique we use here to prove this theorem. So coupling argument. And so the idea is that you want to compare objects that are completely unknown, but intuitively it makes sense again that this should be non-decreasing with respect to p. And so the idea of the coupling argument is going to be, after you fix p1 less than p2, is going to be to construct a bond percolation with parameter p1 and bond percolation with parameter p2, but in such a way that if there is percolation for the process with parameter p1, then there must be also percolation for the process with parameter p2. Of course, if you take two independent realizations of bond percolation with different parameters, there is no reason that this statement is true. And so that's why the way you are going to proceed is by constructing two different bond percolation processes with different parameters, but in such a way that those two processes are not independent and are in fact as much correlated as possible. So eventually doing this, the pair of processes you obtain is called a coupling. In fact, each of the two marginals are going to be indeed bond percolation with parameter p1 and bond percolation with parameter p2, but the pair of stochastic processes is not an independent pair, and so we call that a coupling. And then the goal is in fact to construct bond percolation processes with different parameters. We say also conjointly or on the same probability space in such a way that the relationship we want to prove, which is a probability, in fact, becomes true almost surely. So that's kind of the idea of a coupling argument. That's something that you have to use when you deal with objects that are too complicated to be written explicitly, but you can compare them qualitatively by constructing them on the same probability space. So here, how are we going to proceed? So first I'm going to fix p1 less than p2. And again, the goal to prove that theta p1 is less than theta p2 is to construct a bond percolation process with parameter p1 and bond percolation process with parameter p2 in such a way that percolation for the first process implies percolation for the second process. And so to do this, we are going to look at all the edges one by one and make sure that each open edge in the first process is also going to be an open edge for the second process, but in such a way that edges in the first process are indeed open with probability p1 and the one in the second process are indeed open with probability p2. So what we need to do first to do this is just doing another coupling argument, but not for the whole process, only for Bernoulli random variables that are independent. And one natural way to define a Bernoulli random variable is by using a uniform random variable on the interval 0, 1. And by using the same uniform random variable for each edge that are like for both processes, eventually we are going to get our coupling of our two stochastic processes. So more precisely, the idea is the following: to couple the edges, I'm going to take the interval 0, 1. Then I'm going to take a uniform random variable on this interval, and I'm going to just put maybe P1 here. So P1 and P2, of course, they are probability, so they are between 0 and 1. So maybe P1 is here, P2 is here, and I'm going to say that if U is less than P1, then the corresponding edge in the first process is going to be open. But if U is larger than P1, then this edge is closed. Same story for the second process. If U is less than P2, then the corresponding edge is going to be open for the second process. But if U is larger than P2, then this edge is going to be closed. Now you see that either you are less than P1 and both edges are open, or you are in between, in which case the edge here is closed and the one for the process with parameter P2 is going to be open, or you are here and they are both closed. So that's kind of the idea to construct things. So first I'm going to define a collection, so U of E, indexed by the set of edges of our graph. U of E is going to be uniform in the interval 0, 1. So I'm defining all those random variables. We assume also that they are independent. And then from that we can define our collection of open and closed edges for both processes. So I'm going to do both at the same time. And so you can define Xi in general. So Xi1, that's the notation I use for the bond percolation process with parameter P1, Xi2 for the one with parameter P2, and in general we are going to say that Xi is equal to indicator function on the event that U is less or equal than Pi. So you see that indeed, if U is a uniform random variable, so here I made a mistake, I should precise U of E. So U of E less or equal to Pi. So clearly, if U is uniform between in the interval 0, 1, the probability that U of E is less than Pi is going to be exactly Pi. So from this construction, we deduce first thing that Xi of E is indeed equal to 1 with parameter Pi, or 0 with probability 1 minus Pi. So Xi of E is indeed a Bernoulli random variable with parameter Pi. Second thing we can say is that because those random variables, those uniform random variables are independent, clearly those Xi of E are also independent. So Xi of E not only are Bernoulli random variables, but they are also independent for different values of E. And so from this first point, we can deduce that Xi, so I can write it here. So this implies that the process Xi, and by Xi I mean the collection of the Xi of E for all E in, I don't know, a set that I'm going to write E like that, that's the set of edges. This is indeed a bond percolation process. I'm going to write BP. That's indeed a bond percolation process with parameter Pi. So this construction indeed implies that Xi of this collection of the Xi of E define indeed a bond percolation process with the correct parameter. That's true for I equals 1 and 2, so we indeed have our two realization or our two realization of bond percolation processes with the correct parameter. So now you see that for different values of E, those xi of E are independent, but by construction, because Xi1 of E and Xi2 of E are constructed from the same uniform random variable, you see that Xi1 of E and Xi2 of E are not independent. And in fact, by construction, so I remind you the picture here, again, you have 0, 1, maybe P1 is here, and P2 is there. You see clearly that if U of E is less than P1, then that's also going to be less than P2. So that means that if this is 1, then if Xi1 of E is equal to 1, then Xi2 of E is also equal to 1. It's possible that 1 is 1, the other one is 0, or both are equal to 0. But in any case, you see that a second consequence of this construction here is the fact that for all E, for all edge E in this set E, we have that Xi1 of E is going to be less or equal than Xi2 of E. So, from this, we deduce that not only the density of open edges for the first process is smaller than for the second process, that's obvious from the assumption that P1 is less than P2, we can say more than that. We can say that the set of open edges for the first process is, with probability 1, a subset of the set of open edges for the second process. And so that's this pair of processes Xi1 and Xi2, that's what we call a coupling. The first marginal is a bond percolation process with parameter P1. The second marginal is a bond percolation process with parameter P2. But the two processes are not independent. They are constructed in such a way that with probability 1 we have this relationship from which we can deduce here that if you look now at the cluster of open edges for the process Xi1 starting at 0, that must be a subset with probability 1, that must be a subset of the cluster of open edges starting at 0 for the second process. So that means that C0, and to precise that that's the C0 attached to the first process, I'm going to write the dependency like that by saying C0 of C1 is going to be a subset of C0 of C2. And this inclusion is true with probability 1. So now we are done with our construction. We were able to define a coupling of bond percolation with parameter P1 and bond percolation with parameter P2 in such a way that if this cluster is infinite, then this cluster must be infinite, meaning that if there is percolation for the first process, then there is with probability 1 percolation for the second process. So now, how can we deduce from that the fact that this function is indeed non-decreasing? Well, the last step is not very complicated. It's just by looking at the expected value of a certain function and using some basic monotonicity. And so, to conclude here, let me erase this construction. What's important is really to remember this last implication here. So let's erase all that. Remember that P1 is less than P2, and the goal is to prove that theta of P1 is less than theta of P2. So now to conclude, I'm going to define a function. So a function, let's say phi, and this function is going to be a function of on the set of all the possible realization of bond percolation. So something that I'm going to write Xi. So Xi is the same object as here. That's going to be a collection of zeros or ones on the set of edges of the d-dimensional grid. And so here, to kind of mimic the event that appears in the definition of the function here, I'm going to say that phi of xi is equal to the indicator function on the percolation event. So I'm going to say that this means that C0 of xi, so xi is basically a collection of open edges. C0 of xi, that's going to be the cluster of open edges for this configuration xi, that's going to be the cluster or the connected components of open edges starting at vertex 0. And we are going to look at this equals to infinity. So we just look at this function, and you see that with our construction, because C0 of C1 is a subset of C0 of C2, that means that this cluster is infinite implies that this cluster is infinite. And so that means that this indicator function for C1 is equal to 1 implies that this indicator function, but for xi equals C2, should also be equal to 1. So what I'm saying right now is just the fact that if you have this inclusion, then phi of xi1 must be less or equal to phi of xi2. Now I'm invoking some kind of monotonicity of this function xi, and so from our construction, we also have that phi of xi1 is less or equal to phi of xi2. Now, how can we make the connection between this inequality here and the theta of p1 and theta of p2? Well, that's simple, that just by taking the expected value in this expression. So let me be more specific. Remember that again p1 is less than p2. We start with theta of p1. The definition is exactly the probability that because C1 is indeed a realization of bond percolation with parameter P1, that's going to be exactly the probability that the cluster starting at 0 for the process C1 is infinite. But then, if you look at the definition of phi of xi, the expected value of phi of xi here, that's the expected value of this indicator function, that's exactly the probability of this event, that's the percolation event that again appears here. So that means that the probability that the cluster starting at 0 for the process xi1 is infinite is exactly the expected value of phi of xi1. So this is equal to the expected value of phi of xi1. Now, by monotonicity here, we know that phi of xi1 is less than phi of xi2. So, because of this, and also because the expected value is a monotone operator, we deduce that this is less or equal to the expected value of phi of xi2. And again, going backward like that, you can also prove that expected value of phi of xi2 is equal to theta of p2. So eventually you get theta of p2. Conclusion, each time you take p1 less or equal to p2, you can prove using this coupling argument that theta of p1 is less or equal to theta of p2. So indeed, this proves that this function theta is non-decreasing. So again, if I recap a little bit, have in mind that in probability theory in general, so if you deal with simple objects and you can compute things explicitly, then everything is fine. You don't need to use a coupling argument. But if you deal with a complicated object for which things cannot be computed explicitly, but still you want to prove qualitative aspect of those objects. So here, for instance, the percolation event is some pretty complex event. Computing the probability of this event is pretty complicated, but clearly, intuitively, it seems pretty much clear that the probability of percolation should be non-decreasing with respect to P. The way you can prove that rigorously is by using this coupling argument. And again, the idea is to compare two objects by defining a coupling of them, meaning by defining a pair such that each of the marginal are exactly the object you want to study, but in such a way that the two processes are not independent. On the contrary, you want to have as much correlation as possible in such a way that the type of relationship you want to prove that is something, some kind of inequality in probability or stochastic domination, we say in general, becomes true with probability 1 when the two objects are constructed on the same probability space. So that's kind of the spirit of this technique called coupling argument. So to conclude this video, I'm going to give you one more definition and also two more results that I'm going to state without proof. So first definition, that's the notion of critical value. And so the critical value that we write PC is defined as the supremum of P such that theta of P is equal to 0. So that means that PC is also the largest possible value for the density of open edges such that the probability of percolation is equal to 0. So combining this definition with the theorem we just proved, the fact that the function theta is non-decreasing implies that for all P strictly less than PC, the probability that the cluster starting at 0 is infinite is going to be 0, while for all P strictly larger than PC, the probability that this cluster is infinite is going to be strictly positive. So now, going back to the two pictures I showed you previously, we have bond percolation with two different parameters on the left and on the right. You remember that on the left, it seems that we have a bunch of small clusters, while on the right, we have a giant component of open edges. The fact that those two pictures are pretty different qualitatively suggests that we are in two different regimes, and so that in fact suggests that the critical value PC should be between those two values 0.45 and 0.55. In fact, in the next two videos, we are going to prove using some elegant techniques introduced by Harry Kesten that in fact for bond percolation in two dimensions, PC is equal to 1/2. So that means that in this picture here, in the realization on the left, we are in the subcritical regime, meaning that P is strictly less than PC, while for the picture on the right, we are in the supercritical regime corresponding to P strictly larger than PC. So now I'm going back to the slide and I'm going to give you two more results that kind of going to describe qualitatively those two pictures. So first, let's look at the supercritical phase that corresponds to the picture on the right, where P is strictly larger than PC. So I remind you that by definition of the critical value PC, in this case, we know that the cluster starting at 0 is going to be infinite, not with probability 1, but only with strictly positive probability. Now, this result tells you, in fact, that it's possible, even if it's possible that the cluster starting at 0 is finite, in fact there is existence of an infinite cluster of open edges in this supercritical regime, and it says something even stronger. It says that there can be only one infinite connected component of open edges. And so again, in this supercritical phase, we have this result that we are going to use after to prove that the critical value PC is equal to 1/2, that says that there is existence and uniqueness of an infinite cluster of open edges, and this cluster is called the infinite percolation cluster. So that explains the picture on the right. It doesn't seem that we see two big clusters. Instead, on the picture on the right, it seems that we see only one giant connected component and only little clusters in between in a few gaps. So then let's look now at the last result that describes the process in the subcritical phase, so meaning P is strictly less than PC, which corresponds to the picture on the left. Looking at this picture on the left, you remember that it seems that we have a bunch of tiny clusters, and indeed this result suggests like what we observe in the picture. So again, by definition of the critical value PC, we know that if P is strictly less than PC, the cluster starting from 0 should be finite, but it doesn't say much. Like the definition doesn't, from the definition, we cannot say much about the size of the cluster, except that it's finite. And this result says that there is an exponential decay in the size of the cluster. So meaning that there exists some parameter alpha. Alpha, in fact, is a function of P, is going to depend on P, such that the probability that the cluster starting at 0 has more than n vertices, contains more than n vertices, is going to decrease exponentially with n. So that means that indeed in the subcritical phase, not only all the clusters are finite, but typically clusters are very small.